All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating, almost radical idea. It's this. When it comes to money, your success has way less to do with what you know and everything to do with how you act. We're not talking about complicated spreadsheets or market analysis here. This is all about psychology. So that brings up this huge puzzle, right? I mean, think about it. How is it that some of the most brilliant people you can imagine, literal geniuses, end up totally broke? And at the same time, you've got people with zero financial training who somehow get incredibly rich. The answer? Well, it's definitely not what you'd expect.
Okay, just look at this contrast. It's wild. On one hand, you have this tech executive, a certified genius, right? This guy was so rich he was literally throwing gold coins into the ocean just for fun, and he ended up completely broke. Then, on the other hand, you have Ronald Reed. He was a janitor. He swept floors, fixed cars, and just quietly saved what little he could. When he passed away, he had an $8 million fortune. How does that happen?
So what was the difference between them? It wasn't their IQ, it wasn't their education, not at all. It was all about their behavior, their mindset. And that's the key right there. Success with money is not a math problem. It's a psychology problem. And this really gets to the heart of it. We're all taught to think about money like it's physics, Like there are these strict, unchanging laws and formulas you have to follow. But it's not a hard science. It's a soft skill. It's more about how you handle things like fear and greed, your patience. That's what really drives the results in the long run. Okay, so this brings us to a really big idea about why we do the things we do with money. It's called no one is crazy. And what it means is that every single financial decision you've ever made, it makes perfect sense to you. Why? Because you see the world through your own little money bubble, shaped by your own life. I mean, just think about this for a second. Of everything that has ever happened in the world, in the entire history of the economy, the part you've actually experienced firsthand is, well, it's basically nothing. It's a statistical rounding error. But here's the kicker. That tiny, almost non-existent slice of personal experience, it shapes something like 80% of your view on how money works. It's just incredible. This huge gap between our little bubble and the big, wide world, that's where all our biases, our weird money habits come from. So if you grew up poor, you're going to view risk and reward totally differently than someone whose dad was a wealthy banker, right? If you lived through crazy high inflation, you're going to think about saving differently than someone who only saw stable prices. Two people, equally smart, can look at the exact same information and come to wildly different conclusions, and neither of them is wrong. It's because no one is crazy. We're all just playing a slightly different game shaped by our past. All right, so we've got our own personal psychology going on. But on top of that, there are these massive invisible forces that are just constantly at play. Things we can't put on a spreadsheet, like luck, risk, and these crazy things called tail events. And honestly, these often matter way more than anything we do on purpose. Let's talk about Bill Gates for a second. His success story is legendary, but part of it was just insane luck. He had a 1 in a million chance to go to one of the only high schools in the world that had a computer back in 1968. That was his lucky break. But then you have his best friend, Ken Evans, just as brilliant, just as driven. He suffered a 1 in a million piece of bad luck, a tragic mountaineering accident, and he never got the chance to build Microsoft with Gates. You see, luck and risk, they're the same thing, just viewed from different angles. And that brings us to this idea of tails. It's a super powerful concept. Basically, in almost any complex system, we're talking the stock market, venture capital, even your own career, it's not the average day that matters. It's the extremes. A tiny, tiny number of huge events end up being responsible for almost all of the results. And here's what that looks like in the real world. If you look at a big stock market index, the breakdown is just staggering. 40% of the companies in it basically went bust. Over half were just meh, totally mediocre. All, and I mean all, of the gains came from just 7% of the companies. That's the power of tails. It means you can be wrong a lot and still do incredibly well as long as you're in on those few big winners. So, if our success is so heavily influenced by luck and these rare, huge events, what should we even be aiming for? Well, this is where we run into one of the biggest psychological traps of all, the danger of always wanting more. It's that feeling when the goalpost just keeps on moving, no matter what you achieve. There's this amazing story about Joseph Heller, the guy who wrote Catch-22. He's at a party, and someone points out that a hedge fund manager there made more money in a single day than Heller had made from his famous novel in its entire lifetime. And Heller's response was just perfect.
He said yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough. Man, that just hits you, right? The hardest, and maybe most important, financial skill is knowing when you have enough. And when that goalpost doesn't stop moving, well, you get cautionary tales like these guys. Rajat Gupta, Bernie Madoff. These men were already at the top of their game. They were wildly successful, incredibly wealthy, all through legitimate work. But it wasn't enough. They wanted more. And that hunger for more made them risk everything they had, everything they needed, for something they absolutely did not need. It's a tragic trap.
So what's the point of it all then? What's the real value of money? It's not the fancy cars or the big houses. It's not the stuff. The greatest thing money can buy is control over your time. It's freedom. It's the ability to wake up in the morning and say to yourself, I can do whatever I want today. That right there, that's the highest dividend money will ever pay.
Okay, but to get to that point, to achieve that freedom, we have to understand one last really crucial idea. And it's this. Getting rich and staying rich are not the same thing. Not even close. They are two totally different skills, and they require two totally different ways of thinking. So first, let's get this straight. There's a huge difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is what you see. It's a high income, it's the expensive car, the flashy watch. But wealth is hidden. It's the money you didn't spend. Wealth is the portfolio that's quietly growing, giving you options and freedom down the road. It's what you don't see. And the mindsets you need for each are practically opposites. Getting wealthy, that often takes some optimism, maybe a little bit of risk-taking, putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy, that's a whole different ballgame. That takes humility. It takes a little bit of paranoia, actually. It's the deep-down knowledge that everything you've built can disappear in a flash. Survival is everything. And that's exactly why survival is so critical. Just look at Warren Buffett. We all think of him as this genius investor, and he is. But his real secret weapon? It's that he's been a great investor for over 75 years. He survived all the ups and downs. Get this, more than 95% of his entire fortune was earned after his 65th birthday. That's the mind-bending power of compounding when you just give it enough time. So when you boil it all down, it's not about an endless chase for more. It's about getting to enough. Having enough to wake up every single morning and be in complete control of your day. To have options. That's the real definition of wealth. And that, my friends, is a game worth playing.